So Dimis, last year we were talking about the TED talk that you did about innovation, which was really very inspiring. And this year you've written a book called The Heart of Innovation, and you talk about the different tensions, which you call the four paradoxes of entailed in creativity. Now, one of these is very often when we work in organizations, the ideas tend to come from top down because the leader has the vision and they tend to cascade ideas down. People tend to value ideas that come from above rather than below. And you've discussed this paradox in quite a lot of detail. So why do you think it's important to not only look at ideas that come from above us?
Well, for a large number of reasons, Jasvir, organizations are mostly organized as hierarchies. And the top down is the way these organizations work to a large extent. I believe the top down is, it's not an accident that organizations are organized as hierarchies. There is, it's because of efficiency, it's because of meritocracy, it's because one expects that the people at the top of the hierarchy would be people who are more experienced, who have been who are good at what they're doing, etc. It is important, though, for organizations to recognize that each and every person in the organization has a creative potential, and they will realize it or not within an organization. And it would be a shame not to call for people's creativity in both the strategy, but especially in the workings of the organization. And my thesis is, it is not useful for company leaders, for those at the top of the hierarchy, to say, oh, we want you to be more creative. No, they have to give a purpose, they have to give a direction to that creativity without stifling people. On the other hand, it is also very important to mobilize people's creativity. As you know, we all know now that everybody is creative, that we all have creative skills. These skills are teachable, learnable, developable, and in the right environment, they thrive. In the wrong environment, they are stifled. So my argument is this paradox, top down, bottom up, has to be managed. We need both. We need people power, but we also need strategy and direction.
And very often when people at the bottom of the hierarchy put forward ideas, one of the reasons their ideas may be stifled is because the manager, who is in a higher position in the hierarchy, controls the budget, and they don't want to take a risk on an idea which is not their own and be accountable if that idea fails to yield any outcomes that are positive.
Yeah, and there are all sorts of ways around it. There are all sorts of schemes by which companies invite, and there are schemes that are working in companies by which they invite either individual or teams of people to come up with new and valuable ideas and present them at a high level, thus bypassing their own hierarchy. And people in some organizations can do this across departments. You find 4 or 5 people, you have a good idea, you are given the opportunity to pitch it to a high level of management. So in that way, the hierarchy, the silos, if they exist, the fragile ego of middle managers is not so offended. So there are ways of getting around this without breaking hierarchy.
Yes, because earlier you talked about meritocracy, and nowadays we find that it isn't always a case of meritocracy. We might find people who are at a higher point in the hierarchy than ourselves, but they don't have the skills and the experience because they might have been in the job for a long time, but they don't come with the new qualifications or the up-to-date experience or the fresh knowledge that another person may have gained from outside, but they're at a lower rung in the hierarchy.
Well, meritocracy is something relative. People are, in most organizations, people are judged and people that are a higher step or people above them in the hierarchy will make a decision on whether they should be promoted or not. It's something like that. It's never perfect. In some organizations, it's better than others. In some organizations, it is terrible. And we have beautiful words like nepotism and favoritism and all that.
And words like maverick, you know, if somebody proves to be too much of a maverick and they don't fit in, that is very often cited to be one of the reasons that they are pushed to the edge. You know, they, rather than being promoted, they're encouraged to leave the organization because they don't fit in. And you know, I'm sure that we'll both agree that the creative person rarely fits in because they're always being disruptive.
Well, that's another interesting point, because in a way that brings me a little bit to the second paradox in the book. If I may just say a few words about this, and that's individual and team. And people are creative as individuals. Many great ideas, most great ideas have come or have been formulated by individuals working alone. You do not get, you very rarely get Nobel Prizes for the outcomes of people who have brainstormed together. There are some team prizes, but most of them are prizes for individuals. However, we also know that innovation does not happen with one person alone. It's not a solo act. So one of the important things is to accommodate the lone wolf, the maverick in the organization, who might be a little bit more difficult to work with, might want more time for herself or himself, want more solitary time. So I believe an organization should work hard to accommodate these people, because many times these people who are, let's call them non-conformist, can make very rich contributions to the organization. But it is difficult in the day-to-day workings of the organization. So this is where we want.
Yes.
And this is where we want
very well to integrate that lone wolf, that maverick, to integrate them, to contribute within a team setting.
Right, and this is where we want our teams to be innovative teams, not teams simply of conformists who are doing one thing and doing the same thing again and again and again. We want teams that can question themselves, question the way they work, change the ways they work. And they would do that much better by accommodating those mavericks. Of course, the mavericks must make an effort as well to fit in the organization. And that's the paradox.
It is a paradox. And the thing is that, you know, it's this tension between competition and collaboration as well. Because when people are too much engaged in competing with each other rather than collaborating with each other, then they don't realize that they all have they don't acknowledge that they all have very different skills to bring to the table. And so not everyone in the team might have the best ideas, but the ideas won't arrive at being innovative without the actions or without the strategies, without the ability to think about whether these ideas meet the demands of the local community, of the stakeholders, of the customers.
Right. And if I may say, in practice, when I work with organizations, I will always try to mobilize both individuals' creative skills and team creative skills. So I will ask people to go out and then come back in 1 day, 2 days, 1 week with their own ideas, then share them. Then we brainstorm to produce more ideas. And if we still have the time, again, let's go out alone and come back. And at that point, And I'm thinking about an idea generation phase of 2-3 non-consecutive days. Or sessions, if you like. And then at the end, then together, we can start discussing these ideas. We can start criticizing, judging them, thinking about them from different points of view. And this is this judgmental or critical phase with criticism, if you like, should still be a phase that allows for originality, that must not stifle originality. So it needs courage from the collective or from the team, if you like.
Yes, and you're acknowledging the need for a period of incubation. You know,
Yes.
ideas need to have a phase where they are just being churned, reflected on before they're evaluated. And I think sometimes, especially when people go from the brainstorming phase to an evaluation phase too quickly, they're not allowing that richness of the subconscious, the unconscious mind to work on these ideas, to churn them and to filter them so that you are evaluating ideas which are, you know, right for evaluation.
I couldn't agree more, Jasvir. The team and a first discussion with the team can serve as a springboard for new ideas. And then when you bring those new ideas back to the team, if it's a good team, which just doesn't kill the ideas to continue doing what they're all comfortable with doing. If it's a good team, then that team will take in these new ideas, which have incubated, as you put it, within individual minds.
Right. And another paradox, the third paradox that you mention is the tension between the status quo and change. I know you use different terms for it. You call it
Yes.
continuity.
Right.
I call it the status quo. Some people are
Yes.
very much attached to maintaining the status quo. We've always done things this way and it works, so why fix something which, you know, doesn't need to be fixed, basically. So, you know, how do you think we should manage this tension between the desire for innovation and change and the desire for comfort?
Well, the word managing it is important. We all need some continuity and comfort in our lives. However, change is thrust upon us from the outside, from left, right, and center, to everybody who is living on the planet today. And this change is faster than the change that was experienced by our parents and grandparents. It's simply a fact of our times, and there's no sign that this is going to slow down. I'm not saying it will never slow down. It might, but there's no sign now that it will slow down. So I have always been an evangelist of change, and I have witnessed lots of organizations resisting change in hundreds of different ways. My idea of continuity is not simply there's the status quo we're comfortable in. It's a little bit more like, let's look at our change in such a way that it can also be absorbed by people before we move on to the next change. So when we're planning our change, yes, let us change. Let us make big change. Let's make discontinuous or disruptive change. That's crucial too at many stages in an organization's life. But let us also put in some periods of continuity, which are more periods of consolidation, if you like, where we've taken that change and we're getting the value out of it. And maybe this period of continuity is a period of lots of small changes as well, before we get to another big jump or other big leap.
Yes, I think that's such an important point of this, because some organizations, employees are on a constant treadmill, and very often they end up getting burnt out because there's no time to relax. There's no time to make sure that family life is balanced with work life, and you know, there is no period of consolidation, as it were. So rather than getting overstressed and over burnt out, we need to make sure that there is a balance of change and being able to be comfortable and enjoy the change.
Yes, absolutely.
It's like, you know, we can't always be on holiday, but if we were on holiday like 300, some people dream of being on holiday 300 days a week, but that would be quite boring for other people.
It would be. And you see, every person has a different appetite for change for a number of reasons, for reasons that are maybe completely personal and psychological, but also for situational reasons, where they are, or which part of their which stage in their life they are. So, like it or not, we all have to learn to live with more change rather than less change. And some people will feel that they're running too fast. But if we make everybody sprint all the time, there will be burnout, and the changes we will bring will not make so much sense.
Yeah, it can't be change for the sake of change. There has to be a purpose for change.
Correct, yeah.
And then the fourth paradox, you talk about the tension between imagination and reason. So could you explain that?
Yes. Both imagination and reason are extremely important. Imagination is at the core of creativity. Creative skills are about strengthening the imagination, about giving space to use the imagination. But when we produce lots of ideas, we have lots of lists, a big list of ideas. Many of them are very imaginative. At some point, these ideas have to be actionable, and therefore they have to succumb to the discipline of reason. I think every great ideas are often logical a posteriori, so they're logical afterwards. Beforehand, they might not be, and this is what this is what troubles all those people who have who are chartered accountants and have MBAs and have all these degrees, which are basically based on how good their critical faculties are. It troubles us to think, oh, let's be imaginative in the organization. Let's share our fantasies, our dreams, our visions. We don't do enough of that. It is not enough by itself. In the end, we have to bring the crazy or the whichever idea which seems crazy, we have to ground it in a way. So my plea to organizations is to liberate the imagination, but not allow it to create a simple state of anarchy. Because if we're all producing new ideas all the time, we won't be a creative organization. We'll be an imagination workshop. It's not enough. We need eventually to take those ideas and make them happen. Making them happen means we bring in our reason, and our critical judgment.
Okay. And I know that you are a highly creative person, and have you been able to express your creativity as an independent consultant and freelance person, or within organizations? You know, you've worked in organizations, you've worked outside of organizations. In which space did you find you were able to be as creative as you wanted to be?
Okay, from my personal experience in management jobs, I worked in an international organization, which I found was did not allow my imagination to work really. I was writing reports all the time. And that's why I decided it wasn't for me. I have worked in an organization which really, especially early on in my career, in an organization in which both the people and the organization were focused on doing new things. And you were allowed to make mistakes and you were allowed to fail. And in a third organization in which I was CEO, I tried to recreate that atmosphere, that kind of environment. And it worked up to a point, because our owners then had their own limitations, and they had their own blame culture, which is very, very, very destructive to innovation.
There needs to
So
be.
I've had a smattering of everything. Now, my clients, again, they are very different. As a consultant, there's so much you can do. You go with your company up to a point. Some of them, yes, they grab onto creativity and keep learning new things and use the techniques and methods that we explore together. And others will say, oh, that was a great workshop, and then tomorrow not much happens.
Well, there's stages, isn't there, in an organization? You know, like there's the life state, the cycles of the business, and perhaps creativity is more welcome in the earlier stages where the company is experimenting and taking risks, whereas, you know, as it grows into the phase of maturation and, you know, do you think it's maybe like at that stage of maturation, if companies start becoming creative and innovative again, they wouldn't go into that decline phase, which is inevitable otherwise?
Yeah, I firmly believe that. However, sometimes the forces that restrict creativity are quite objective forces. If we look at, for example, the broad financial sector, and I'm thinking not only of banking, but also of different shades of banking, but also insurance, trading in financial products, etc. For a number of reasons, there has been so much regulation that has been imposed on these organizations that they have had to redeploy big resources of their own organizations to cater to things like compliance. I'm not saying this is a bad thing, but this has, it's for them, instead of, compliance takes a big chunk of their resources. So they haven't really innovated. And you can see that most of the fintechs, and I'm talking about the financial technologies that are coming out, they're really coming out of smaller companies, which are being acquired by these big banks or insurance companies or whatever. It's not generated from within. That is sad, and I hope I hope the good ones move on to strike a new balance. Compliance, yes, serving one's customers, absolutely, but also serving them in new ways and radically new ways. That is what I believe is the future.
Okay, great. Is there anything else that you think is important for us to be thinking about in terms of creativity and innovation?
I think I am situating creativity and innovation in my book, The Heart of Innovation. I'm situating it within an organization. There's much more. There's ourselves as individuals. There's ourselves as members of communities, as citizens as well. I haven't dealt with that, but it's my firm belief that we should begin to value creativity as part of an organization's life. I feel sad because not all organizations do that. I hope more and more of them do.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that positive encouragement, Dimis. And I really value your work, and I hope that the next time I'm speaking with you, you will have written yet another book or done another TED Talk or something else inspirational, as you always seem to.
Well, thank you very much for hosting me in this wonderful conference, Jesvia.
Okay, look forward to speaking with you soon. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.